Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start our would you rather question for the day, would you rather give access to your browser history to your parents or your boss? Let me know in the comment section down below. Our first story today comes to us from St. Harrop. I got back at them big time. Let's jump right in. I worked for 2 years at a tile store. I handled customers as well as worked in the warehouse. Not to brag, but for those 2 years I worked the earliest shift that no one wanted, because you had to receive the daily truck and put the tile orders away by hand at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I also said I would work every Saturday as well. Now, I didn't do this because I hated myself and wanted to suffer. It was because I wanted the outside sales job. The outside salesman that got the job entered right after I started, and we hit it off quickly. We will call him Joe. Joe confided in me that he had no plans to continue this job after about a year or so. So from the get-go, I said I wanted that job and worked my butt off to get it. Pulling shifts no one wanted, doing jobs no one would do, and doing things that were definitely not part of my job description. This included doing a lot of the outside sales jobs. I would take over when Joe would call out or just needed help. He came to rely on me and gave me part of his job. I saw this as a type of internship and thought it would pay off. Fast forward 2 years, Joe tells me that he's about to put his 2 weeks in and to get my resume together. He puts in his 2 weeks notice. I immediately put my application in. I got the backing from both Joe and the branch manager to get the job and did a pretty good job on the interview. I knew that I was pretty much a shoo-in for the job. I had seniority and had never caused a problem in the time I was there. I had a very good relationship with the contractors I sold to and knew all of them by name. The main part of the outside sales job was working with the contractors, so I felt confident to say the least that I had what the company was looking for. 2 other employees applied as well, an ex-convict who had anger problems. That will come up later. We will call him Bob. And a recently hired woman who had no experience in tile, we will call her Anne. The only other job she had ever done was as a secretary, and she was currently just helping customers with selections. Both of them were older than me. I was in my early 20s and both of them in the 30s. A couple days after that, I got a call from HR telling me I didn't get the job. Instead, they wanted to give it to Anne. I won't lie. I thought I misheard or it was a prank at first. The only reason HR would give me as to why they passed me up for the position was, "You're just too good of a worker and valuable at your position for us to lose you. You do such a good job and are so responsible, we would hate to lose that. So because I'm good at my job, you won't hire me for another one with more responsibilities? Yep, but to show you how much we appreciate you, we are giving you a $1 raise. Do I still get my yearly $1 raise on top of this in a couple months? No, think of this as we're giving it to you 2 months early." I was fuming for a couple of days. Their excuse didn't make sense, and I had a feeling that I was being discriminated against due to my age. However, I was set upon making a point that they chose the wrong person and came up with a plan. Because I was so good at my job, I didn't get the outside sales job. So if I was bad at my job, maybe they would promote me then. Let me rephrase. I wasn't bad at my job, but I told my manager that I no longer would work the morning shift, would no longer be there on Saturdays, would no longer do the worst jobs, and would no longer be doing any jobs that fell outside my description, including the outside sales job I had been helping with. Anne goes out for a couple of weeks for training and personal time, during which things are already starting to fall apart. My manager asks me to fill in for Anne just while she is away. He understands why I'm doing what I am, but asks as a personal favor. I agree, and things begin to get back where they were before. Anne comes back and I resume my firm stand. Anytime something was supposed to be done by the outside sales position that I normally did, I would send it her way. Customers, problems, heavy to lift things, and other favors I used to do for Joe, I refused to do for her. It gave me a little relief to see her running everywhere, trying to get everything done. She only asked me once to help her, to which I just told her that it wasn't my job. Those first couple of weeks, things were a little rough, as most of the jobs were left over from when Joe and I were running things. So most of the problems came from the daily grind. But the weeks that followed were chaotic to say the least. Items came in late, jobs were missing or unordered, contractors didn't understand where their materials were. Mind you, these guys get paid per job, so every day their material isn't there is another day they don't work or get paid. So when their materials don't come in, their workers who are paid hourly are getting paid for no reason at all. My favorite one is when she accidentally sent an order across the country, costing the company thousands as we lost money on that job. As things were starting to turn into the dumpster fire I knew it would, HR called me in to talk about my attitude. "We have heard of your attitude as of late. It doesn't sound like you're being a team player." Well, I am sorry to hear that. Have I said something hurtful to someone? No. Did I hurt someone's feelings unintentionally? No. I don't understand what attitude you're talking about then. "We have received word that you aren't being as helpful as you were to Joe as you are now to Anne." Well, you see, I'm far too valuable at my current job. I can't possibly detract away from that. They immediately saw that they made a mistake in giving me that reason as to why they didn't hire me. They then told me that I needed to be more of a team player and would pay me an additional $1 an hour when the yearly raise came around in 2 months. I told them that it wasn't my job to do what they were asking, and if they wanted me to do that, they would have to negotiate my contract. They told me that they would need to discuss it and to reconsider being a team player. I didn't relent, and they weren't interested in renegotiating my contract. Well, 2 months after Anne got the job and things went to hell, she stepped down. Again, I put my resume in, as did Bob. Now, remember how I said that he had a slight anger issue? Well, that came to a head just before Anne put her 2 weeks notice in. Bob threatened a contractor. The contractor was a real piece of work, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Bob threatened the guy. Regardless, with this now happening and Anne putting in her 2 weeks, I couldn't see how they couldn't hire me. It was me or someone who threatened customers. I once again go through the process, but this time I play my cards close to my chest. They didn't know that after Anne was first chosen over me, I started to look for a new job. Just as this interview process was going on, a company called me back and offered me an outside sales job at their company. It was lower pay than my current company's, but they didn't need to know that. They also did not need to know that I accepted the position and told them I needed to finish my 2 weeks. I wasn't going to give them my 2 weeks though. I was going to make it look like it was a competition and try to string it for those 2 weeks. The company offered me the outside sales job and nearly begged me to take it. They apologized for making the bad decision of picking Anne over me and told me that they would love to have me in the position. Now, let the fun begin. I promptly told them that I would need to think about this as their competitor had also just offered me that same job for a higher pay. The look on their faces was to die for. I pretended that it was back and forth for 2 weeks, which conveniently went over Anne's quitting date and my new job starting date. They got anxious because they now didn't have anyone for the job and finally gave me a final offer. I promptly shot them down and told them I didn't want to work for a company that treats hardworking employees like crap. They can sleep in the bed they made. Then I told them I was starting the next day at the other company. I have never been so happy. A lot of people in management positions look at the people below them and think, well, they have to keep this job. It's all they have. What they don't realize is that there are other opportunities out there and we will actively seek them out. When you have an employee that's doing this much extra work, it's up to you as a manager supervisor to keep them happy. If you don't, they might just start doing their regular work, no extra work, and then you're in a huge bind that you can't get out of. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from My Posting Name 13. You're capping commissions on our most in-demand vehicles because you're not doing any extra work, so you shouldn't get extra money. Fine, let's see how that works out for you. Let's jump right in. I realize that this story could absolutely be current, but it's not. Another thread reminded me of it, and I think it absolutely fits here, so here goes. Back in 2014, I was selling cars, Ford specifically. For all those who aren't car buffs, both the Mustang and F-150 were getting ground-up redesigns for 2015, and Ford had just announced that there would be no Shelby Mustangs or Raptor F-150s for 2015. Instantly, we were fielding several calls a day about these vehicles, and almost overnight, the inventory we had came with a $10,000 to $20,000 market adjustment due to demand. Our GM loved both vehicles and traded for them whenever he could because he loved chatting about them with buyers. So we had 21 Raptors and 6 Shelbys still on the lot when I sold a ruby red Raptor extended cab at $10,000 over sticker the last week of the month. Both are crazy numbers for the 200 new cars we sold per month. With the trade, I was due about $4,200 in commission, but my check was about $1,700 light. Come the first Saturday morning meeting after payday, we were told that commissions on such vehicles would be capped at $2,500, retro to last month, per a previously ignored provision in our pay plan. There was much grumbling, but management stood firm, citing how incredibly easy Raptor and Shelby deals were. They weren't wrong about that. There was no such thing as a test drive until the deal was done. You could absolutely drive the car before you bought it, but only after we had a signed buyer's order, credit app, and the deal had been submitted and approved. They were generally in and out in under 45 minutes, if not half an hour. But still, dealerships get free money and don't want to share? Cue malicious compliance. I talked to several other salespeople who to a man were pissed, and we colluded. I whipped up a little Excel macro widget that would take the invoice price and holdback, add in pack and whatnot, and spit out a sales price that would produce an exactly $2,500 commission. I sent it to every salesperson we had, and everyone used it. It only took 3 signed buyer's order with seemingly arbitrary numbers for the desk to figure out what we were doing and to call another meeting. That meeting was basically management yelling at us, and the entire sales staff calmly saying, "Remove the cap, or you'll never see another signed buyer's order that exceeds it. F you." The cap was lifted 3 days later. Commission caps are a great way to get your employees to work hard until they hit that cap number, and then they do absolutely nothing. I really like the way the sales numbers were worked out in this one though, because the employees realized if they weren't getting that extra commission, then they were going to make sure that management wasn't going to get it either. This next story comes to us from Guy from Death Valley. They wanted me to be precisely on time, so I did. Let's jump right in. This occurred while I was still in apprenticeship at my current workplace a few years ago. It was never really commented on by management, but was internal within my department. We have an electronic time-stamping system to log our work hours. When we arrive, start work, we stamp in, and when we leave, we stamp out. The log time is then uploaded at the end of the month, and our monthly worked overtime is calculated. At the time, my daily habit was, if my shift started at 12:30, I'd leave home at 12 and be at work roughly 12:15 or 12:20, depending on traffic. In really bad cases, it can be 12:25. Now, it's relevant to know that for every hour, there are time spans in which 2 people have to be present at work at all times. From 12 to 12:15, 12:30 to 12:45, 13 to 13:15, and so on. So the employee could only leave his position when his replacement in work clothes was present and logged. That's why I was oftentimes quite early. If I arrived at, say, 12:20, I'd immediately log in, change into my work clothes, and while I did that, the colleague I replaced could change clothes and go home, since I'd be ready at 12:30 at least. Now, there was one colleague who did not like that, mainly because I'd collect overtime for that, even though other colleagues could take that time off their schedule. So he told me to be logged in precisely on time, at 12:30. Though he wanted me to already be in my work clothes before logging in. Since we weren't allowed to wear our work clothes outside of work, including the work commute, he wanted me to be early at work to change my clothes, to send a colleague off so they could change their clothes while still logged in and leave for home, while myself only collecting the time my shift is. So I did pretty much that. I'd be at work at 12:25. If I was early, I'd sit in my car in the parking lot and wait. Then at 12:25, would go in, change my clothes, and stamp in, which could take more than 5 minutes to do. And because I wasn't early enough, my replacement could not leave early and would make overtime they didn't want. Of course, most colleagues didn't mind that. Nobody cares about staying 10 minutes longer. But a certain colleague did absolutely not like that. This entire thing then ended up backfiring on him when I didn't make enough work hours, since he also demanded I log out when I'm done with work early in the evenings. So with each week, my time account would shrink and shrink. They'd have me work additional days, but they could not do that all the time because as an apprentice, I wasn't allowed to work more than 5 days a week, which I already regularly did. They also could not let me work additional hours per day because as an apprentice, I wasn't legally allowed to work more than 8 hours per day either. So of course, at some point, the department management asked questions on why I'm constantly missing hours, on why the apprentice is working weekends too often, and why is he making 9 or 10-hour shifts? After a month, he stopped complaining about me being early, and ever since then, things have worked flawlessly until Corona hit. I was wondering why OP was taking orders from another employee and not from management in this case, but then I realized that it was an apprenticeship situation. OP was an apprentice, and the person that they were taking orders from was a full-time employee. One other thing to quickly note is that if your employer requires you to change into uniform and not wear that uniform outside of the workplace, that means that you can do all of the changing, the coming to work and changing, the leaving work and changing before you leave, on work time. You are entitled to be paid for that time because it's a requirement of your job. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.